Welcome. I'm Jonathan Hessen, and this is Hudson Institutes Deep Dive from Jerusalem and Washington, D.C. And as we're deliberating the latest developments, particularly with regard to the ongoing raging war between the State of Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran, we will focus, of course, in today's discussion on America's latest decision to join the battle, particularly against Iran's nuclear infrastructure. And beyond that, what are the current Iranian capacities, particularly with regard to its aspirations to attain nuclear weapon capabilities? What is it doing in the other sectors of the war against Israel? But before all that, let's introduce our experts for today, going from left to right. Mr. David Albright, one of the leading experts on nuclear proliferation globally. He is the founding president and CEO of the Institute for Science and International Security. Next to him is Major General in Reserve Yaakov Amidror, formerly Israel's National Security Advisor and currently a distinguished fellow at both JINSA Center in Washington, D.C., as well as the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security here in Jerusalem. And last but certainly not least is Brigadier General in Reserve Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of the Intelligence Directorate at the Mossad Intelligence Agency and also a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate. It's great to see all three of you. And I'd like to start with you, General Sofrin, to give us a little bit of insight to the American operation that was prosecuted over the weekend against Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Give us a little bit of an understanding of the three sites that were targeted and what is their current state.
The American attack was focused on the main effort was on Fordow, as expected, because we cannot do it by ourselves with our capabilities. Now, we don't really know what happened in Fordow because when we look from above with satellite images, you can see that some places were hit. You don't really understand if the bomb succeeded getting down to what we call the production halls, where the centrifuge are, and what kind of damage was caused to this centrifuge. That's first. And we need to see somebody from the inside telling us, or not us, but telling what really happened there. And we don't really know what is the effect of the bombing to what happened within this production halls. Second, a day before the attack, the Iranians, we spotted by what we call satellite image, we spotted the convoy of about 20 huge trucks at the entrance of one of the tunnels, and the rumors were that they took out some very important materials. We don't really know what kind of materials were taken out, but let's assume that this was kind of part of the enriched uranium that was hidden within these tunnels, and they took it out in order not to be damaged if and when the bombing will take place. That means that if I'm right, with assuming that, and I'm not sure that, of course, this is full truth, is the fact that Iran still has that enriched uranium under its possession, and it can make use of that for different other purposes. Now, regarding to the two other facilities that were attacked by one of them by bombing from the air, but nevertheless with what we call strike missiles from submarines. On Isfahan was totally destroyed and it cannot function anymore for the time being. And the second one, Natanz, was hit badly. I believe that our attack prior to this attack on Natanz also made huge damage. The manager of what we call the IAEA said that he believed that the centrifuge that were hidden below at Natanz were also damaged because of this attack. So we can assume that this one was really damaged. And they don't really know what the current situation of the whole process is right now, because we don't know what happened in Fordow. But nevertheless, if these two facilities were destroyed, that means that part of the capabilities of Iran to carry out and to continue developing nuclear devices are badly damaged, and delayed for several years.
Absolutely. Well, the Israeli strike also included the energy infrastructure surrounding Isfahan. So naturally, the implications, both in Isfahan and in Natanz, to the centrifuges, which are quite fragile, uh, may have already brought about quite the devastation. But on that, I'd like to ask Mr. Albright to give us some of his expertise. What is the Institute's current BDA, if I may call it that, the battle damage assessment in this stage, which is seemingly early, as also General Sofrin has mentioned?
Well, I agree that we don't know really what happened deep in Fordo. I mean, I would add that we saw three of the holes right near the ventilation system that we know from um, designs that were in the nuclear archive, because Fordow was part of the Ahmad plan to be able to make weapon grade uranium, and and when we checked some of the, for example, the location of the ventilation shaft in the drawings with satellite imagery, we could actually see when it was being built, and the and so we know where it is, and so the three holes are right near that ventilation shaft. So I think we can conclude the facility is inoperative. Um, and then Israel's strike last night against the tunnel entrances in the access road, which we have not, we're acquiring imagery now for that. We're also wondering if the support site down the road from the underground site has been attacked last night. So I think we can say Fort House inoperative, and therefore, in the short term, Iran cannot make weapon grade uranium. But it does maintain the stocks of 60%. We think much of that, if not most. Um, we also find that Esfahan was between the two Israeli strikes and the U.S. strike. The above ground facilities have been pretty hit, and the U.S. actually took out, seriously damaged the facility to make uranium hexafluoride. And it took Iran a long time to build that site. And so if Iran wants to enrich again on a fairly substantial scale, it's going to have to rebuild that capability. And so I think so. The, I think these bombings have really set back Iran's ability to enrich uranium. We also try to monitor the facilities associated with making the nuclear weapon themselves, and feel that Israel's taking out important targets. I mean, there was one enriched uranium metal conversion line that was taken out in the first Israeli attack. They've been attacking they just attacked the headquarters of SP&D, I think, twice. They attacked a nearby SP&D kind of research and development site, plus a site headquartering some of the subdivisions of SP&D, and destroyed several buildings. We think they're hitting things outside um, of Tehran. So I think they're making it will take Iran longer to make the nuclear weapon itself. And so I think overall it's moving from my point of view in a direction of that's consistent with the goals. But I don't think we're there, and these stocks of 60% are very important, and we don't know how many centrifuges Iran has built and not deployed. And so I think today, for example, I felt comfortable doing breakout estimates for 1 month and conclude it's zero weapons that could be produced. But in the coming months, I'm not so confident. We need to um, think carefully about the next steps.
Absolutely. Well, General Amidul, before the strike on those installations was prosecuted, as General Sofin also mentioned and highlighted, the various trucks that were seen uh, queuing alongside the entrance of the Fordo installation. We could suspect that they were trying to retrieve much of the over 430 kilograms of the 60% enriched uranium of the U-235s. If they did manage to do that, and of course, I am hopeful that this process that the Iranians were pursuing was actually closely monitored, and they have managed to trace where those trucks have gone to. But nonetheless, all the Iranians effectively needed was a structure as large as a basketball stadium in order to utilize that enriched uranium into weapons-grade material. And then from there, the road to a first nuclear device was not too far away. So my question here is, to what degree are we in this very fluid situation able to so-called, get the fog of war to the places where we do need to look and basically scrutinize those activities by the Iranians?
The real answer that I don't know. I don't know where the enriched uranium was moved. If it was the enriched uranium, maybe the enriched uranium was in another place and not in Fordo. And what they took out is all the centrifuges and the enriched uranium, which was in the process, which is a different situation. I don't know. And I think that very important is to look for you have to convert the gas back to metal to make the bomb. And for that, you need a facility. And those facilities, as far as we can understand from what was published, had been destroyed. And this is going to be the bottleneck for the future efforts of the Iranians. But yes, no question that taking out the enriched uranium from Iran is a very important issue that should be dealt in the future. If will be any agreement, will not be any agreement, we have to find it in the bomb.
General Sofrin, what's the next step in this whole conundrum of issues, since the United States has struck 3 targets? Now it is bracing itself, and of course in a very defensive posture, for a potential Iranian retaliation, which would, in my opinion, be more like a suicide vest for the Iranians, so to speak, or operation, since the retaliation then by the Americans would be far more significant. But from your perspective, what should we focus on within the current very intensive or rapid developing story?
I think when you look at Iran right now, you have several alternatives that they have to decide which one to choose, which will be the best one for them. The first one is to try to hit back the Americans by hitting the garrisons in the Middle East and installations, and then they would risk another attack by the US, huge massive force that is deployed in the Middle East, and I don't believe that they are going to risk and take such an action on their behalf. Maybe by one of the proxies or something like that, but nevertheless, they will be blamed and they will be the one who has to pay, will have to pay. The second one is they threat to deny any vessels to move from Hormuz Straits into the Gulf of the Iranian Gulf or the Persian Gulf. And that means that they are risking the anger of all the world, and they won't do it. And even the Chinese gave them a warning not to carry out this activity because they are risking the whole world. The third one was to try to retaliate against Israel, but I think their capacity are degrading, and they are not capable of issuing a very, what we call, massive attack into Israel. They can annoy us by launching 2 missiles a day or night to keep us awake, and but for the long run, it's not a solution. And the fourth one is to say, okay, we understand the situation, we have to give up. We're going to have a takiya on their language. That means we're going to declare that we are willing to negotiate, to get to some agreement, but in the end, we'll first of all stop the Israeli attacks on Iranian soil, and the second one, to give us the leverage for the long run to rebuild our capabilities, and we know how to do it in a concealed way, just like we did before. But in this way, what we call the regime is going to stay in power just like now, and Iran will not suffer any more attacks, and they can invest their efforts now to rebuild its capabilities and to be prepared for the next phase.
Indeed. Well, this was actually mentioned by both Secretary Hegseth as well as by Vice President J.D. Vance. Mr. Albright, when we're talking about the unrelenting efforts by the Ayatollah regime to pursue nuclear weapon capabilities, they're very clear about their intentions to continue enriching, that they have a right to do so, and they keep being very defiant in this line of thought. But nonetheless, Vice President Vance has managed to point out that the United States does not seek war with Iran. It seeks war with Iran's nuclear infrastructure. What's the difference?
Well, the deal would be very different. And I think the U.S. is shifting into a more comprehensive arrangement and moving away from the kind of deals that were associated with this Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which aimed at limitations, and moving toward a deal that would end enrichment. And I would hope that the model is more what happened after the 1991 war against Saddam Hussein, where it's more structured, like a ceasefire agreement where Iran has to give up its capabilities to enrich uranium and also its capabilities to make nuclear weapons. So make the weapon itself, and that would be verified by sufficient IAEA inspections. But we're not looking at an arms control treaty, but more, I would argue more, we should be looking at a ceasefire deal. And if Iran violates, and if they, for example, deny inspectors information or are simply reverting to their historical deception methods, that hostilities could resume. And so I think I have no idea if that's what the Trump administration is moving toward, but I think it's certainly called for in this situation, and there's an opportunity to do it, and that would have a lot of benefits to assuring neighbors that Iran's power is going to be limited. It would certainly bolster the nuclear nonproliferation regime, because one way to look at this action, although it's not the main one, but it is an attempt to enforce the nuclear nonproliferation treaty. So I think if we can move toward that and that kind of deal, then you can deal with the remaining stocks quite efficiently. Iran would have to produce them. The IA would verify that it's complete. They know exactly how much Iran had, and some is lost for sure in the bombings, kilograms for sure lost in the pilot plant attack, but they could verify, and then those stocks could be removed. Now, obviously, Iran doesn't want to do this, and so my view would be that this war will probably continue. And in fact, I would add probably should continue in order to get a good diplomatic solution out of it. And in that, Iran can claim it has a right to enrich. I mean, as long as they're not, I mean, any U.S. company can start an enrichment program and have a right to enrich, but very few do. In fact, only very few takers, because it's a very difficult business to enter into because it's so uneconomic.
Indeed. Well, General Amidror, I'd like to ask you from a strategic level. On the one hand, we do hear both the Vice President and Secretary of Defense in America saying we're not interested in regime change. On the other hand, we're hearing now President Trump coming out and tweeting that he, despite being not necessarily politically correct, unless the Iranians want to make, or the Iranian regime seeks to make Iran great again, as he put it, why not see a regime change? This, of course, has its various implications, but nonetheless, when you really look at the core objectives that Israel has pushed for in this campaign, include, again, focusing on Iran's nuclear infrastructure and the ballistic missile program. Regime change may be a byproduct if the Iranian people themselves take that into their own hands. But it seems that now, in light of the repeated attacks against civilian infrastructure in Israel, the Israeli Air Force is targeting the various installations of the regime that are utilized in order to oppress the Iranian people.
From our point of view, we needed the Americans in the offensive side because the Americans were helping us to defend Israel, two batteries of THAAD. From our point of view, knocking out Fordo was the place in which we needed Americans. Very specific target that we couldn't make at the same level of destruction that the Americans have. And the fact that it was done by the Americans, from our point of view, we don't need Americans to help us in the continuation of the attacks inside Iran. Of course, the Americans are sovereign and they will make their own decisions, but from the Israeli point of view, for Israeli needs, according to the plan that we have, we can handle it. Of course, I checked last time, and all the airplanes which made their way from Israel to Iran and back are all American-made. But we don't need intervening of American forces. Israel will do the job by itself, as it was done during the operation, with the uniqueness of Fordo, which we could not have the ability to destroy. About the future, it very much depends on the regime. If the regime in Iran declares that he stops the nuclear project, and they understand that they should not have the ability to launch missiles into Israel, Israel will finish with the operation immediately. We don't have any need to continue to attack in Iran. It is just to convince the regime to after we hope that we destroy most of the facilities relating to the nuclear project. Now we want the regime to make clear that the regime is not going to have nuclear project in the future. Unlike what was declared by Mr. Larjani, who said yesterday, I think, that the Iranians have enriched uranium, they have the know-how, and they will continue. If this is the regime, we don't want such a regime in Iran, but not because we want a regime change. We cannot have a regime change. We cannot bring the opposition to alive. There is no opposition in Iran. So I think that from the Israeli point of view, what is important is to weakening the regime, not because we want a regime change, but because we don't want a regime that continue the nuclear project and continue to attack Israel. And this is what we want to achieve. And the minute that the second that the regime in Iran says we are stopping the project, we don't want the project, let's have an agreement how you can monitor it and be sure that there is no any nuclear project in Iran, I think that Israel will stop the operation.
Indeed. Well, we're drawing near to the end of the program, and I'd like to give each of you 30 seconds each, 40 seconds each, to give us a little bit of your focus or whatever you want to focus on. Dr. Sofrin, we'll start with you.
I think that we have to focus on monitoring how the regime is going to act in the next coming phases, what kind of alternative is going to choose, and accordingly to understand what kind of development should be following its own decision how to act.
Mr. Albright?
Yeah, I think it's important that the attacks continue until we have a better sense of what is important to seize and remove, and I think the stocks are one of the important things to hunt and find and remove or render useless. Also, I think we shouldn't lose sight of the centrifuges that exist there that we don't know the location of. And so I think this war needs to be continued, and it's very important that the U.S. continue to provide a supporting role. And I would hope that the U.S. does not have to take any more or undertake any more attacks.
Well, as General Amidol said, Israel can prosecute
I want
the
to say
rest.
something about the future. I think that the intervening of the United States of America in the war made in the Middle East more people understand that the continuation of the Middle East is very much depends in alliances which will the Americans provide kind of an umbrella. And unlike in the past, people in the Middle East understand that they can trust the Americans. The Americans have the capabilities and the determination. It will open doors to a really totally different Middle East, more stable, more peaceful, and economically more successful.
Absolutely. Well, this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank Brigadier General in Reserve Dr. Amnon Sofrin, Major General in Reserve Yaakov Amidror, and Mr. David Albright for all of your insights today. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition, this has been Hudson Institutes Deep Dive from Jerusalem and Washington, D.C., and from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.
Shalom, I'm Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former deputy foreign minister and member of Knesset. Today, I'm very privileged to be hosting TV7's Middle East Review and also being a panelist of the various shows of TV7, which I find the most enlightening, most educating if you really want to understand the world, the global scene as well as the regional scene of the Middle East. It is worthwhile to watch TV7.
For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.
Jerusalem Studio, now available on Spotify.